Next one's probably going to be one of your favorites is, do you believe there is or should be a place for behavioral-based approaches for safety?
If colleagues insist on behavioral safety, then my counsel to them would be as follows. I will only follow them there once they have convinced me that they have done absolutely everything else that human factors and safety from the past 120, 130 years tell us that we should be doing, all the way from selection recruitment to human factors design to safety by design, to setting people up for success organizationally in terms of the incentive structures around them, in terms of the leadership and the teamwork. Once you've got all of that bedded down and you still see a residue of work, okay, convince me that there's some behavioral stuff you should do. Go ahead.
You're fairly vocally challenge simplistic slogans like zero harm. Should leaders set ambitious goals? And if so, how can they avoid the trap of the safety theater that you've spoken about recently?
The only way to avoid the trap of safety theater, indeed, the title of a recent book, is to be authentic. And whether that means you need to set a target that is achievable or relevant or inspiring, sure. I mean, in some sense, I don't get too excited about that, Ben. I mean, we've always wrapped some of the ugliest endeavors of humanity in beautiful slogans, right? Manifest destiny, right? Bunch of Americans going across the plains, killing native populations under the title of manifest destiny, because that's our target, the West Coast, right? So is that what we're trying to do here? No. Be authentic, be honest, be compassionate, and listen. That's what leaders should do. Listen.
Next one is, if we assume that we should measure things, what do you really think we should be measuring?
First of all, we should be measuring the reason and impulses behind our desire to measure. What is it that we're trying to do? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? Who are we trying to keep happy with this? Then what we should be measuring is the extent to which whatever it is that we're producing is actually authentic and reflective of the thing that we want to count, measure, and do something with, whether it's predictive or helps us do things meaningfully within the business. So some self-awareness, some self-reflection. I think if we can measure that first, then go ahead. But do you know what, Ben? I think whereas all of that is true and sort of quaint, I think we really are not yet amiss. That would be the wrong characterization, but work needs to be done on measuring capacities that make things go well, right? We have that invitation from Safety 2 to live up to. Safety 2 says, right, or Safety Differently, these are the capacities. We need to understand how they make things well, identify them, enhance them. But can we measure them? There are boards who want to see these things. So and we've got some initiatives in the direction, as you well know, right, in the due diligence index, and all of these things are still gameable to the point that some don't really trust them. Fair, right? And I understand the commentaries around that. The challenge is not necessarily to critique them only. The challenge is for us in science to help industry develop measures that actually measure up to the invitation and expectation of Safety 2, Safety Differently.
I remember reading, I think it was Holnagel, that said, we don't really need any more accident models. We need models of how work normally succeeds, or something to that effect.
Ben, the fixation on accident models, and Eric suggesting that we should have fewer of those or no longer any, but rather models of how work actually gets done and how we succeed in getting stuff done, despite the fact that we make it very difficult on people, right? We put a lot of clutter around them and stuff they need to do around the governance and documentation. We misunderstand what it actually takes for them to be successful in their role. We misalign incentive structures. And so we put a whole bunch of surveillance around them, but don't really know what we're looking for. And so we make it very difficult for people to be successful. First of all, one could, of course, make the argument that all you need to do to have a model of successful work is to take the inverse of the accident model, right? And I'm sure that Uncle Jim would say exactly that, right? Take the Swiss cheese slices, right? So patch up all the holes and you're good to go, right? Which is, of course, nonsense. And it's not a good accident model to begin with, right? It's a cartoon. It's sort of an analogy that is a direct knockoff of Heinrich's dominoes. But I think there could be some value in thinking, though, in terms of the inverse of an accident model and see how far that goes. I mean, there is a sort of a theoretical thesis topic for you right there. Right? Let's invert 5 accident models and see whether we can actually start modeling how work goes well and whether we can thereby support work going well. Great research question as far as I'm concerned. Otherwise, I fully agree with Eric. Now, we're of course, naturally attracted to the spectacular, to the unusual, right? It's almost sort of a journalistic streak in safety science, right? Ooh, something interesting is happening here. And Eric has kept on insisting throughout his career that the most interesting things happen where nothing is happening.
The dynamic nut event is why I call
Yeah,
it.
yeah, the HROs have sort of foreshadowed that as well. Correct. Yeah.
When we do actually try to quantify and measure things, do you think we might lose something in that process? And if we lose something in that process, what do you think that is?
Then I think any way in which we code things, whether it is in language or pictures or pieces of video or numbers, you make analytical sacrifices. It is inevitable, right? There's a translation from the actual thing that you're seeing in the world or noticing or picking up, and its translation into some code. So yes, I think the answer to that, though, would be to be as liberal and open-minded and broad-minded as possible in terms of your measurement, your documentation, as in understanding, right? Tell the stories, do the measurements, give it all, because none of it captured it by itself.
Do you think, are there still fundamental unknowns about managing complexity or complex environments in safety science? And do these things worry you, like not having sort of the insights around those issues?
Yes, of course there are. And no, they don't worry me. That's the whole idea about science, right? We don't know. And in fact, it shouldn't be seen as an accumulation of answers to begin with, but rather we need to just get better at asking the questions. I don't even think that we're really, really super good at asking questions of complex systems yet, because most people don't speak complexity theory very well. But what we see, for example, is if you want to understand complex systems, you have to understand relationships, right? Stop looking at parts, go up and out in your thinking, not down and in, and know that you control very little, but you influence almost everything else. And so there's interesting questions to be pursued there for sure.
Okay, and last question. This one's kind of a follow-on, but given today's world of interconnected systems, so we have systems of systems in everything now, and with the mass scale adoption of large language models and other agentic models, I'm wondering what excites you the most looking in towards the near future, and what probably concerns you the most also?
Very little of this actually excites me. Most of it concerns me. And I think then what concerns me most is what we're not seeing, right? If every search is a Google search, then somehow Alphabet gets to determine what we see, what we don't see. And one of the things that we, of course, know about accidents, what we know about safety, what we know about drifting into failure, and what we know, in fact, for that matter, about the erosion of democracy and the rise of tyranny and authoritarianism, is what we don't see. What is it that is elided? What is it that is renamed in a way that makes it impossible for us to notice and act on? That is what is scary about this stuff.
All right, so that's all the questions I have. Is there anything you want to cover before we wrap up, Sid?
I think you've done
your time.
You've done a commendable job, and so very nice. And I like the rapid fire. So now let's take it another time. If there's a possibility or a need for a more long form, in depth chat about something, we should probably at some point, maybe compassion as a topic.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard?
It's just such a human thing, but hard to, yes, you're right.
Exactly. So
really appreciate your time, Sid. Fascinating as always. So that's it on Safe As Q&A. Hope you enjoyed it. I want to do a few more of these. I don't know if it's going to be a regular feature or not, but let's just see what happens. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I really appreciate if you can comment on the video directly on YouTube. It really helps, I think, feed the algorithm's lust for attention. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next time.